everyone. Welcome to day 5 of MC13 updates with Jan Walters. Hi, Jan.
Hi, Joan. It's very good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you, and good to see that you're still going very strong despite the postponing of the Ministerial Conference.
That's why we are here.
Yeah. Is there any indication of when it is likely to end?
That's $1 million question. I think a lot of people are asking it. Last night has been sleepless for many around this ministerial. The plenary is to start in 10 minutes and then closing ceremony at 8. Now, whether that's going to be that case or not, I don't know. Might be, it might not be. I think it's going to get a little bit delayed beyond that. I just spoke to a couple of people from the Secretariat, and they tell me that the hard deadline is coming. Whether it's going to be, 11 p.m., whether it's actually the 8 p.m. or whether it's midnight, I'm not sure, but it's likely that Friday is the last day of this ministerial.
And for people who are following the ministerial conference for the first time around, why do these extensions happen? What is really going on that needs more time?
So I think there are two aspects. Both of them have something to do with negotiating tactics and negotiating processes. So one is that there is a perception, often correct, that having more time yields better results or better deals, right? This can be part of a kind of tactical approach, but this at some point kind of turns into a fallacy, right? At some point, there is not going to be a better deal, even if we spend 10 more days. So it's up to the chair and facilitator and the director general to sense when that moment is coming up. And the second part is that obviously negotiators want to show their full cards only at the very, very, very end, right? But nobody knows where the very, very, very end is, because that's the moment where everybody's kind of like show all their cards at the same time and make the biggest compromises. And then what happens is that the director general or the chair or somebody needs to create a hard deadline when it's clear to everybody that that's the time when it's going to end. So I remember the last ministerial, the Geneva canton and the Swiss government were providing security for the venue. And at some point, they left the premises and they said, look, we're not providing security anymore. And that was the moment when the Director General basically said, yeah, we need to end this because we're losing the host government in kind of providing us with all the services. So it can be created by this, it can be something else, it can be a local habit of working on some days and not working on some days. So long story short, I have a sense that this hard deadline is coming tonight.
Wow, it sounds very human, like it gets to that human level where there's pressure, kind of like move or something else is going to happen. So despite the delay happening, there's still some light, or there's still specks of light. And particularly with the fisheries deal, so there was a fisheries deal that was done at MC13. And now it looks like there might be one also at MC12. And now it looks like there's one at MC13. Can you explain what's changed and why is it important?
You're asking about the right agreement because I hear that it's almost done. But there's a saying in the WTO that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So we are still kind of moving parts. But what I hear is that the fisheries agreement is ready to go, and there is likelihood of an agreement by the end of today or by the end of the ministerial. Now, they're dubbed Fish 1 and Fish 2. So Fish 1, that was done at the last ministerial, and it was still a difficult negotiation, but I would say it was the easy part. It's a discussion how to cut most likely, but also how to handle subsidies that go into fishing. And the Fish 1 agreement was agreement on cutting subsidies which went to illegal unregulated fishing. So the so-called IUU fishing, which kind of, it feels like a no-brainer, right? Like, obviously subsidies shouldn't be going, like government money shouldn't be going into unregulated and illegal fishing. But it's hard to define, it's hard to determine, it's hard to kind of like say. So anyway, that was done. It's still undergoing ratification by a number of countries, and that's Fish 1. Fish 2 is the more difficult one. Again, on subsidies, but this time it's subsidies that contribute to overcapacity and overfish stocks. So this one is much more difficult, right? We're not talking about illegal fishing. We're not talking about unregulated fishing. We're talking about fishing which contributes to depletion of fish stocks and overfishing, which again, it's even much harder to kind of define and carve out. So that one is the difficult part, I would say. But yeah, it looks like we are almost there even on fish 2.
And just on fish 2, why would you say this is important?
Yeah, you said it yourself. It's about sustainability of fish stocks. And by extension, it's not only about the fish, but it's also about the fishermen, right? Like if there is no fish, they don't have livelihood. So it's about sustainable fishing. It's about sustainable fishing on the side of the nature and biodiversity, but it's also economic sustainability. So that's the importance. Now, the specific details of the agreement are obviously very important to this. So yes, there is a lot of criticism going on around, is this agreement going to actually make a difference, or is it just kind of whitewashing? In a way, delegations are trying to kind of go to an extent, and there are various positions on this, so that it actually is beneficial to the sustainability piece, both of them. But there will be criticism. There will be criticism that this is not enough. It should have been more. It should have been more cuts and all that. So basically, the mechanism there is that if you give subsidies to a fishing vessel, it kind of uses the subsidies to fish more. If a government doesn't give subsidies or targets the subsidies not to fish more, but for example, to fish more sustainably or to fish with fish welfare measures and so on and so forth, then it obviously is a different type of subsidy, and that's better for both the environment and the fishermen.
Right. I think we're kind of getting more and more into the direction of the work that follows after an agreement has been reached. And I'd like you to walk us through what happens after the closing statement is made and an announcement on the different outcomes is also made. What happens next as part of translating these agreements into action? Again,
a very pertinent question, because it's not about just doing a deal and then opening a bottle of champagne and all is done. No, obviously, it's about where this takes us. That's why the ministerial conference is the 13th one. It doesn't mean that ministers just come in once and everything is done and resolved. So I would say there are 3 buckets. One is the deals, like the fish. What comes next is ratification. Usually Parliament, but there are various systems nationally need to ratify the deal. And only when 2/3 of members who sign the agreement ratify it, it enters into force. It starts to be applicable. So on fish 1, we are still not there yet. It's still not in force. There is still a number of members that need to ratify, so it enters into force. And then implementation. It's not just kind of having a deal and it's done. It's also implementation. On the fishery side, it's implementing the commitments, both nationally as well as internationally or multilaterally. There's a lot of assistance to developing countries to be able to comply with and implement the agreement, and so on and so on. So there is a lot of work ahead if a deal is done. The second bucket is various extensions. And we talked about the e-commerce moratorium to be extended. If something is extended, then it's kind of like business as usual. Life goes on as before. It sounds menial, but it's not. It's really important, especially on the e-commerce moratorium. This is very important for predictability to business, right? Like where to invest, how do we operate? So the predictability element on kind of moratoria is really important, and their extensions. Now, if there is no extension, again, we can take the e-commerce moratorium. If there's no extension, there is a new reality, and there is a lot of kind of adjustment. And on e-commerce, that would be unexpected. And I think that's why there is a lot of push from the stakeholders, across files, across geographies, across sectors, across size. There is a push by stakeholders to extend the moratorium. And then a third bucket is mandates. So the ministers get together and they either create a new mandate, say, we need to talk about this. That's the case, for example, of industrial subsidies or industrial policy and subsidies that relates to each other. And that creates a mandate, and then go back to Geneva and discussions start. Or there can be a mandate to continue discussions on something, and that's probably going to happen on dispute settlement reform. There has been done work. Now ministers get together, say it's going well, let's continue and let's finish it. It usually has some types of deadlines, sometimes, what specifically should be discussed. And so that's the work ahead. That's the nitty-gritty of what the WTO will be doing in the next months and years.
Okay, thanks for summarizing that really in a very crisp way, Jan. So you've talked about ratification and then implementation and then the mandate. Those are the three broad steps that kind of follow after an agreement has been reached, so to speak. Okay, yeah, so we're basically coming up to the end also of these series, and we just want to thank you so much, Jan, for being part of this journey, so to speak, with our audience as well. We're very, very grateful for the substantive and comprehensive inputs that you've been giving us. We know that the final announcement is going to be done later on this evening on sort of like what has been agreed on or what is pending, of the Ministerial Conference. And we also just want to let you know that GTP together with Jan will collaborate on a final article, basically detailing the outcomes. And Jan, do you plan to also do something on your socials?
Well, I will try to send in a wrap up on my LinkedIn, so anybody should feel free to follow me there. We will talk to our clients and to other stakeholders of Akins to really digest whatever happened. Even in no deal scenario, there would be necessity to kind of react, right? Yeah, so stakeholders right now are writing two different press releases, one on the positive side, one on the negative side. So it's there. But look, what I wanted to also thank you and Geneva Trade Platform for having me. This was it was usually a highlight of my afternoon here, as it kind of it was an anchor to kind of sit down with you and really try to make sense of what is really happening. Otherwise, my brain was just kind of, running around together with my feet a little bit, but I was all running around. And it kind of feels like the end. I don't know if the audience, whom I thank very much again for looking at, viewing and listening, I don't know if they've heard, but there is actually deconstruction happening as we speak. So that kind of gives you a signal that, yeah, it's probably coming to an end. I'm really looking forward to collaborate on this piece with GT as a wrap up. And yes, we will be digesting and going forward with whatever happens.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jan. We look forward to seeing you and welcome you back to Geneva and to the Geneva Trade Platform offices again. The conversation continues on social media, so be sure to check out Jan Walter's LinkedIn account, where he's going to be sharing the closing remarks or the closing outcomes of MC13. Thank you so much, Jan. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much, Joanne. And anybody is really welcome to Aiken offices in Geneva. We have an open door policy, so do let me know if you want to stop by and chat.